regulatory and institutional and financial matters requiring political intervention must be clearly identified and escalated urgently in order to ensure that the implementation process remains aligned with the original strategic objectives and does not lose focus nor momentum. Our program of action will further include the Gauteng service providers Imbizo, which is focused on unpaid invoices and supplier relations, structured engagement with the media, reporting on the financial and economic sector, and direct engagement with the employees of the Gauteng Provincial Treasury and other departments, particularly health and education. We'll further conduct targeted oversights, visits to stalled and abandoned infrastructure projects, revenue generating facilities, municipalities and provincial entities in order to assess expenditure patterns, governance failures, infrastructure performance and service delivery challenges. At the same time, I quote, Imali Yabahlali and Chelete Kiabathu program will take provincial budgeting and financial information directly to communities across Gauteng in order to improve transparency and public participation on how public resources are allocated and spent. The white elephant that we see on our right must never ever happen again as long as we are still entrusted with the responsibility of financial management across all spheres of government in the province. The Gauteng Provincial Treasury will take further engage institutions of higher learning, researchers, students and economic stakeholders on proposals that are aimed at growing the Gauteng economy, advancing reindustrialization and addressing unemployment. This will include economic policy engagements, career and financial literacy programs for learners, structured discussions on innovation and economic planning and state capacity. We are equally deeply concerned by the growing trend of intimidation, of violence and assassinations that are directly targeting public servants who are involved in financial management, who are involved in auditing and governance, and involved in anti-corruption work within municipalities and government institutions. The tragic deaths of officials such as Babita Dokaran, Manimatha in Mfuleni, and Pomolefe in Ekuruleni serve as a painful reminder that efforts to restore accountability and financial discipline increasingly place public servants at a very high risk. Until government decisively confronts criminal networks, corruption and intimidation directed at financial officials, long-term stabilization of public finances and government systems will remain under constant threat. It is also for this reason that together with MMCs of finance, financial administrators and other stakeholders, we will convene a memorial and an awareness program in honor of those officials and to enforce the importance of protection of ethical public servants who serve the people with utmost integrity. The program of action outlined above will not be implemented in isolation by the Gauteng Provincial Treasury alone. Its implementation will take place through continuous consultation, coordination and engagement with provincial departments, municipalities, entities and stakeholders under the leadership of our Premier in Gauteng Province. We are not going to work in silos. Whilst government provincial treasury remains the custodian of public finances, budgeting oversight and financial governance within the province, it is the departments and municipalities that remain at the coalface of service delivery and developmental delivery to over 16 million people living in Gauteng. At the same time, the program of action will be implemented alongside the tabling and the processing and the ultimate finalization of the 2026-27 provincial budget. Within an environment of growing fiscal pressure, rising service delivery demands and constrained national allocations, We have now a completely stable government to be able to take the budget to the legislature. The reality confronting Gauteng is that the current fiscal and resource envelope remains fundamentally insufficient to meet the actual economic, social and developmental needs of the province. The continued growth in learner numbers, overcrowded classrooms, pressures on scholar transport, deteriorating school infrastructure and increasing demand for education services already demonstrate the scale of funding pressures confronting Gauteng. At the same time, the Gauteng provincial government continues to carrying the financial burden that is associated with GFIP, e-tolls, settlement arrangement, including the upcoming 4.6 billion that is due at the end of June 2026. The implications of the arrangements continue to place our pressure on provincial liquidity. Beyond these pressures, Gauteng continues to confront growing demands associated with all of our social services, infrastructure maintenance, migration, urbanization, housing demand, public transport systems, and deteriorating municipal finances within a constrained revenue environment. However, despite all of these pressures, we remain committed to strengthening governance, rebuilding institutional capacity, improving oversight, eliminating leakages, and ensuring that every available public resource is utilized more effectively. It's more transparent in a manner that it delivers visible developmental outcomes. We closed off the financial year on the 31st of March 2026. We are more than ready in terms of ensuring that we do our necessary submissions to the Auditor General, and we are expecting no worse situation than we found ourselves in than the previous year. But we must at the same time also declare that there was an over expenditure in particularly Gauteng Management Agency, who sought themselves to have overspent above their budget to the tune of 998 million rands. This we will declare to the Auditor General without fear or favor, because we are not here to cover up for anyone, and particularly wrongdoing, more especially when it relates to unauthorized and irregular expenditure. The successes of public financial management will ultimately not be measured by accounting processes alone, but by whether communities experience improvements in schools, in clinics, in roads, in housing, in transport, in municipal services, in public safety, and the broader living conditions across Gauteng. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the state of this Gauteng, and this is how we plan to take it forward. I thank you very much. Sabong. River, thank you. You didn't provide me water like the city of Johannesburg at times.
Thank you, MEC. We now head straight to the questions and answer sessions, but before we do that, we would like to acknowledge the MMC Mlungisi Mabasa from the city of Joburg under the portfolio of human settlements. You are welcome. And without further ado, we are going to ask that the media houses, please introduce yourself and the media house that you are representing. And I'm also going to ask that our executive, when you respond to questions, please just introduce yourself so that the public is able to know who they're talking to. I'm going to take the first set round of questions. The gentleman from Tembisa Online, you may introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Mfanelo Tsanibe. I'm from Tembisa Online. Thank you so much, MEC, and also greetings and protocol. I just wanted to find out, there was the then MEC, they used to talk about township development, hostels, and I'm not quite sure if they are calling it Trish or Tish. I just wanted to find out, is there a way of continuity with your department currently? And also, I know that there was an investment conference just a week when you were getting into the office. What has been your observation? Do you think it's something that the Gauteng province as the whole? Can we see any continuity into that, or it's a restructuring from scratch? Thank you so much.
Let's do it this way. So it's gonna be yourself, sir, and then the gentleman next to you. Can we have
Good.
the lady at the back, and then we'll end with you for this round of questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Shannon Merrickska, CBC Africa. MEC, I think coming to Soweto and coming to Dube Hostel, I'm sure your officials and the security told you you are mad, but welcome to coming to where the people are. Because some of your officials, they sit there in the boardroom, they do projections for places that they don't visit. So welcome to Soweto and welcome to Dube Hostel, which I see the security is full, but this is where your people are. I don't know why there's so many police, but let's leave that. There's an entity called Family Tree that's supposed to, or was supposed to, help spaza shops. What we know, the entity has collapsed. The black businesses, the spaza shops, South Africans are crying. What are you going to do to make sure spaza shops get assisted so that they can survive? Two, you talked about Gautrain, the money that was overspent. Now, MEC, here's the practical thing. You take Gautrain from Park Station to Isando, Rosefield. You pay a certain price. When you just go to OR Tambo as a South African, you pay 224 rand. But if you get off less than 1 kilometer away to OR Tambo, you pay 50 rand. But that's corruption, MEC. So does it mean we as South Africans, we're not allowed to go to OR Tambo? Then the same Gautrain, if you go to Pretoria, it pass OR Tambo, you pay 100 rand. There's something wrong with the figures, MEC. Please look at that, because our people want to go to OR Tambo. Last but not least, we are here as the media, so we can't shy away from this. Government don't support the media in general. So what are you going to do now that you are there, now that you are coming to township? What are you going to help to help black-owned media and community media? They are not the same. Community media is your Josie FM, your Radio Eldos, and so on. Black-owned media is your KCBC and others where they are shareholders. Thank you.
Good morning. Silva Sivia from UFM. You just mentioned that the office of the Premier, or that department, is the one that pays its service providers on time. Can you share which ones are the worst, and what are you finding is the problem?
Okay, my name is Katlego Logoti from the SABC. Mine is just on the issue of the households that are struggling to pay for these services. This seems to have been a long-standing issue even from the previous administrations. As you step into office, what then becomes a solution? Because even where we are now in Soweto, we've often seen the residents, demonstrating, marching to ESCOM to say they can't afford to pay for the electricity. What then, according to you, becomes a long-standing solution when you hear residents saying that we can't afford, but at the same time, there are expectations in terms of revenue collection from the municipalities and the province? The other one would be on consequence management. You seem to have stepped into an office that would be more or less besieged with a lot of issues. Some of them would be issues that would be long-standing issues. What then becomes an area of consequence management according to you? How are you going to do things differently, looking at the fact that you are talking about services that have not been paid over time, accruals that have increased over time? What then becomes the consequence management for that, and how do we find ourselves here? Who then shoulders the blame? Thank you.
Welcome as well, Mr. MEC. I had at least two questions for you. The first question, my name is Chichis Lepe from the local community media here, the Bantuwel. We just want to find out why. I think that comment has been made, but we just want to find out why did you come to our local community here in the township, particularly here at the hostel. In fact, we appreciate that, but I think there should be one probably overarching reason why you chose this thing. So we just want to find out, maybe if you can just unravel to us, or maybe do we expect maybe in the near future any developments towards our facilities here, or this institution, which has never experienced any development since 1994. The roads, no infrastructure at all. My second question to you, here in Dube, we also have a technical and vocational learning college, which was built by our grandparents and great-grandparents. Today, it no longer provides technical and vocational skills training. We no longer have builders that you can point at which were trained at that institution. I'm raising this because you just spoke about your initiative as government to improve in terms of artisan training. Are we going to expect your department, or should we approach, or the college should approach someone in your department to be able to assist or coordinate with the colleges here? Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Yamtanda Kapa from News 24. MEC, you spoke quite extensively. It's 12 pages. It was long, so I hope you indulge me. I'm going to start with the underspending on conditional grants. You've listed those departments that didn't spend on grants. What's the actual figure, and are those going to be now sent back to the National Fiscus or the Treasury? And then the correspondence from the Minister of Finance around withholding portions of equitable share. When did you receive that correspondence? Just that. And then on e-tolls, your predecessor made it quite a point to invite us to each time he paid that debt, he would invite us. My question to you, what's the actual plan, considering that you also have the maintenance of the toll? So I just want to understand that, are you not in trouble? What's your real true assessment of the state of finances considering this debt? And then my antennas always go when you speak about insourcing. We have case studies of municipalities that take insourcing because of your party, or as a result of motions that come from a political party. We know your stance on insourcing. Now you're talking about insourcing in the province. Usually in municipalities, it would leave a hole in the budget. what's the feasibility of insourcing on a provincial level? Thank you.
MEC.
Is that for me to respond?
Yes.
No, thank you very much for the questions.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that.
Thank you very much. I'm going to allow the administration to answer to some of the questions, and then I'll answer some of these as well. So we'll start with the investment conference. The investment conference is a program of the provincial government. So there's no restructuring from that element, besides to even attempt to overly complement it, so that from the 200 billion commitments, it increases to 300 billion even in the next year. Because the honest truth is that the state does not have the liquidity in the immediate or the resources to engage in a process of infrastructure development, so that can equate to additional employment, because our people are unemployed now and we are looking for development now because our infrastructure is non-existent now, and the people who have the money can then just complement that through development. So the investment conference will continue to run, but obviously the Premier will announce it because it's a provincial-wide that centers around that particular office and the Department of Economic Development. But we'll complement it in the best way that we can. Why are we here? Why are we in Soweto? Thank you for welcoming us today, but we are the people of Soweto. We are the children of Soweto. We were born in Barakwana, the hospital. We stayed in Soweto, Zola 1. I actually even went to school in a primary school called Esitebeni Primary School in Soweto. So this is where our people are. This is where the 179, 180 billion that we speak of in the boardrooms, in the financial sectors, that ultimately in the conversations amongst the people that say, when you say this, the markets will collapse. When you do that, when those markets collapse, the people who are affected the most are us here. So as or everyone who is here is on the basis that bar off today and decided to come here. They are here in their majority, most of them, as we were driving in and walking in, on the result of the economic standing of Gauteng, which has more unemployed people than those who are actively participating. So the budget of Gauteng is for the people of Gauteng. So it became important that we come down to the people of Soweto and engage them. And we have also said, Uti, imali yabahlali le. And therefore there must be a greater appreciation and an engagement directly to the people that are affected the most. And I know in terms of public participation, we are very limited legislatively as a province in terms of how we engage communities to formulate our budget. Unlike municipalities where there is a process of public participation through IDP and so forth, which makes the budget even more personal to its people. But we said that both in the process of the formulation and the establishment of the budget, and even after, as we go along, we'll have to take our people along, so that we sit here and we look at them straight in the face and say, 180 billion yako EAP yayenzani. You know, currently 60% or so of it is sitting in the hands of paying for human resources, and our people ought to know that, and they ought to be engaged about it. You know, so that's why we're here, and we're here as well to constantly also remind ourselves that part of financial mismanagement that happened in the past and that has become a cultural norm, even in finances, should not, and departments should not find itself, at least in this particular administration. And when you look to your right and to your left, is as a result of that, where 100 million was spent, and we've got nothing to show for it as a government. And it's also to highlight that, and highlight and uplift the areas that we would have not ordinarily gone into, with cameras and all of that, to say there's a problem here that must be corrected, with the patrons of Dube Hostel, who we have failed to listen to as a government. And that's why we're here. So it's not political gimmicks, it's the conscious understanding that the budget belongs to the people and it should be engaged at that level. Look, the aspect of the fee paying and the structures of fees in Gauteng is a competency of the Department of Transport along with GMA, but it's a consideration of what you are saying, and I think as we engage the agency, we are also looking at those aspects of it, because from a treasury perspective, ours is always to ensure that GMA is functioning optimally, including looking at the rider culture of those who participate and how we can best come up with products to ensure that also at a social contract level, it's open to as many people as possible, but also as well that it becomes profitable and it's continuously profitable for the state. The Office of the Premier, in terms of paying, the best they do, they pay not only within 30 days but also within the 15-day period. In the main, they've met a target of 100% throughout, and I think the departments who are still struggling in the main in terms of both the 30 days as prescribed by the PFMA and the 15 days, which is our own internal control mechanism, still remains the Department of Education and the Department of Health, who are lacking behind in terms of ensuring that their service providers are paid within 30 days. But for the past for the past month rather, there has been an increase in the payment of service providers within the 30-day period of the very same departments that we are speaking of. But equally as well, there is a low adherence to our 15-day payment internal policy that we would have spoken to. And that is also still once again directed at the Department of Health and the Department of Education. And you'll understand the reasons being is that, and even on township business owners, they are also at a weaker space in terms of ensuring that those payments are done within the 30 days and 15-day period. You would understand, because this is as a result of a very high budget that they have to run themselves. They are running at a budget of almost 70 billion, both of them, and therefore in terms of goods and services in their budget, there is a much more higher budget than all these other municipalities. I mean, all these other departments as well. In terms of the government support for media and black media specifically, we are going to have that engagement with ourselves, as we have said, in terms of the program of action, and that's a conversation that we can take up in that platform in terms of how best can we ensure that there is a sustained support base, because outside of you being media is that these are business entities as well that ought to be supported, and that's where we need to come in. This should be including ensuring that when we're doing our advertisements for posts and so forth, we direct those procurement services towards in the main black media houses and so forth. But we must also understand that once we do that, we must still complement it with a more nationwide media houses, because would be found wanting at some point if we are to advertise for an HOD position in VOT, you know, or in Shannon Merrick's, and then we get only 4 people to apply, and then we start appointing people based on the 4. We would have not extended our base in terms of finding at a national level from a national footprint perspective. So there is also that element that we need to be in understanding of. But in terms of well-targeted audience, well-targeted engagements by the departments and by particularly the Gauteng provincial treasury, it can be targeted, because mainly of our black media is target based. So if we want to engage the people of Soweto, we know the local media spaces that we need to engage in, and then give them the necessary support. So we are admissible to those interactions with the media. The expectations versus the revenue in terms of solutions and service delivery. I know, and there will be announcement in the as well in the next couple of weeks that speak to the bulk infrastructure agency that must be built to address, you know, some of these concerns. And the Premier, even under the coordinating forum, has had to absorb many of these responsibilities under that forum that we also serve in, to ensure that there is service delivery orientation outside of the scope and the mandate of provincial government, which includes that the water infrastructure and bulk infrastructure development undertaken by municipalities is foreseen and ultimately included in the grid, as well as electrification of certain areas, particularly now that we're heading into winter, and the substations and transformers would have been a responsibility that the Premier's office would have taken directly, collectively as well, working with all the necessary departments, the waste management and environmental management perspective. We do have a department that then is enforcing coordination with all the work with the municipalities that is being undertaken, and that speaks to the immediate solution. Ours is to ensure that there's a complement of that by ensuring that the funds are there and that they are used for those particular aspects of service delivery orientation. There is a need to ensure that there is an increase in terms of the revenue base, not only of provincial government but as well of local government, and that can only happen through a more structured, well-coordinated planning, which would have to advance with municipalities, because municipalities have a tendency to work in isolation, but we have a responsibility at a provincial government to coordinate all of that work and synergize it, so that indeed we're able to increase on revenue basis for both ourselves and for the local municipalities. In terms of consequence management and the long issues that we have raised that there have been continuous findings. What we had also directed was that the audit committees sit on a more quarterly basis, but we've got monthly reportings in terms of the financial standing. And that was to ask the treasurer as well to look at more engagements and sittings by the audit committees on a more monthly basis, so that we are able to identify these small things that manifest themselves into big things every 3 months, and that way we are able to close. Because consequence management is also on the basis of ensuring that where the internal control systems put in place and where did people adhere to them. And after 3 months, a lot of damage can happen. You know, we're sitting in 1 month, our books and everything was looking good, and in the next month we had an over expenditure of 998 million as a result of someone's doing their GMA. So for us to also limit that is to ensure that there's a live system for us to continuously track these things and be able to hold people to account. And holding people to account is not just limited to the HR process where people get suspended and then you don't deal with issues with 3 months and then they happen to come back. Is that there must be a timeless response in terms of an HR process. Once you have identified, there must be forensic auditing and all of that, and reports that then come in within the legislated timeframes, deal with those issues. And where we are able to identify that there is a recovery, we must be able to go in and recover the money of the state in those areas. And that's how we're going to enforce consequence management fully, outside of just being partisan and being subjective at times to certain situations. We find ourselves here more than anything as a result of non-consequence management practices to a conformity. You know, there's a language, and I'm happy that I'm not a head of treasury or at that level, because there's also an element of not wanting to agitate, because we don't want to collapse the markets. What will people say? How is the view of society? And we just come in, and when we come into that space, we're expected to conform as well to the language and to the culture and the attitude. And I'm in no way saying that the culture and the attitude of those who serve in finance and treasury is lackluster. It's gets to be relayed across, and we come from an orientation as Susanna would have said, or Sia would have said, that is matter of how we speak and how we address those matters, but there are no contradictions between ourselves and treasury, and we know that that which we had discussed and resolved will be implemented. Of implementation, by the way, in terms of the identification of risk, holding people to account, and advancing the discourse of consequence management to the relevant departments. But it's also total of the provincial treasury under the HOD to say we must now ring fence the budget of rates and taxes, electricity and water, that must be directed at those payments, and those payments are done effectively, and they are done within the 30 days, you know. The underspending on the conditional grants, it's the Department of Education. I think it's sitting at 75 million in terms of early childhood development grant. It's the Department of Health, which now, yeah, National Tertiary Services Grant. I think it's standing at about 200 and something million. 240 sports, arts and recreation. It should be about 25 million or so. It's about 25 million. Underspent Department of Human Settlement. And the Department of Human Settlement as well. And the Department of Roads. Agriculture, which is standing at 86.5 million. And these are the departments who have on the previous grant allocations. There is a request for them to do a rollover, and all of them have asked for a rollover in the next financial year, except for the Department of Sharek, which is Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture. They are the only departments that have not asked for a rollover. So we are busy with those business plans and the submission to the National Treasury to ask that there be a rollover on these amounts. The culture is that we invite you every time we pay. We are going to invite you again on the payment, because you must come. At one stage you were given a bill of e-tolling. You must be able to see that we are paying off that bill on your behalf, because at one stage it was an act, and there were legal ramifications for the payment and non-payment thereof. What are the actual plans? The Department of Transport and so forth will be able to elaborate in terms of the repurposing of that infrastructure, because we can't allow it to continue as fruitless, regardless of how much we have contributed towards its establishment, and equally the debt that we are now sitting off with. Ours was to ensure that we pay it off and we pay off the debt. We are on course in terms of the paying off the debt. As we said, in June, we'll be inviting you to say we're paying off this portion of the debt, and then we're left with the last tranche in terms of the payment, in accordance with the payment plan. And then we complete it. It has an effect in terms of our operations, because you can imagine the previous 10 billion with this 5 billion that we have paid so far, it would have been money that we would have directed rather towards the building of schools, toward the completion of hospitals, towards many other service orientation that are required for us to do as a department. So the constraints are there, or the money could have just as well be invested elsewhere from a treasury perspective, where we can get the necessary interest and accumulate revenue based on that interest. Insourcing, feasibility at a provincial level. It's always unfortunate that when we wear the red overalls and we say a particular thing, it comes across differently than when we are when someone else says it, because the introduction of insourcing, when you look at just the past weekend, the provincial government incorporated about 2,500 young people who are artisans by nature, builders, plumbers, electricians, to come and compensate for the work that ordinarily would have been outsourced by government. And they are now in the mainstream, going to be doing those activities. Whereas in now, when I've got a leaking roof in our office, we're not going to go and procure it. We are just going to call upon those who have been identified in that artisan program to come and do the necessary work, we've also, and there are many other departments, by the way, in the provincial government that has insourced some of, if not most of the functions. At one stage, majority of the functions that are now lying in e-government would have been outsourced. They are now insourced and they are functioning optimally. The traffic wardens, the provincial Gauteng traffic wardens, and the attempt to repurpose them is an in-source element that we speak of, because we spend about, in terms of property-related expenditure framework as the province, it's well within about 5 billion or 5.5 billion, where we spend a lot of, a fraction of that 5.5 billion towards security services and cleaning. And these are permanent services that are required. If we can alleviate the pressures of payment towards that, because we already have, them in uniform, they have the infrastructure, they have the transportation and operation perspective of it. If we redirect that and then we put them towards good use, give them the necessary training, we are able to save in the cost of billions towards that particular service that can be directed towards other services as a province. And that's genuinely what the call is for when we speak to that element of insourcing. There has been an outcry that we spend a lot of money on leasing of buildings when we have our own. So we're going to have to go back and go back to our own buildings, rebuild our own buildings, uplift the infrastructure there, and use our own building facilities as opposed to going on a lease. That's to a certain extent as well. It speaks to insourcing, because we would have saved money from the potential leasing. So I will just stop it at that and ask our colleagues here if there is any other matter they would like to respond to.
Thank you, MEC. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I will just deal with just two questions. There was a question relating to township development and TISH, which was a strategy that was focusing on township informal settlements and hostels, and that is supported by township development in the form of the legislation that was passed, the Township Economic Development Act, which we refer to as TIDA, which is a continuous process that was spearheaded by economic development that was also ensuring of these businesses as far as Spaza Shop is concerned, so that they can be registered and they can be monitored to also safeguard the communities that consume the goods and services that are provided. So it is a program that is continuing, so it's not changing. And as a treasurer, we monitor on a monthly basis, because we call that targeted groups within our communities or within the economy that require us to support them. And together with also our provincial banker, we have initiated, or we're working with enterprise development and supplier development programs that ensure that if someone receives the PO, a purchase order from government, there is also, a process of creating funding, because what also makes the businesses in the townships not to even start is the lack of funding to actually deliver even when they have a purchase order. So with our banker, we assist them to get the funding and make sure that at least their business can have a chance and actually kickstart the process. And then just adding on, there was a question around the households not paying for municipal services. I think MEC, when he started, he highlighted the challenges that, as we were growing a bit in our economy. Now we are having to deal with the impact of the war in the Middle East affecting the prices. So we will probably looking at our inflation rates coming up a bit, because we all know that the price of fuel affects more than almost everything that is in the economy, because all the goods need to move from where they are manufactured to actually the consumers. So the transport cost affects almost everything that's in the economy. So, and also in a way, it's going to affect, how businesses, the success of the businesses, and we are likely to see issues of retrenchments as well, or the inability of businesses to create more jobs. So what we look at, the working together with National Treasury, is something that is called a local government equitable share, which is a funding that the municipalities can access for those families that are not able to pay for the services that they are consuming. So as a province, so that is a function that sits in municipalities, but the initiative that is being currently undertaken by the province is to ensure that the municipalities know exactly who qualifies, and who qualifies for that by creating a database which we call an indigent register. That means that we engage with your SARS, our revenue collecting, our tax revenue collecting agency, because from there you can easily pick up who is employed and who's unemployed. And we also look at working with our Home Affairs to ensure the legitimacy of this register. So the list of these individuals that will be categorized as not being able to pay for their services is what you submit to National Treasury, and then they can provide you with a subsidy of some sort, because the services will be consumed. But if the individual cannot, the households cannot pay for that, then National Treasury closes that gap. So that's the initiative that we are embarking on. I think, colleagues, I'm not sure if there's anything that I've left out. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, we are going to take the last set of questions simply because we have to accommodate our executive management officials here. We actually hijacked them. They have a meeting scheduled. They were having a meeting scheduled for 10 o'clock. The executive management meeting scheduled for 10 o'clock together with the MEC. So we humbly ask that we take the last set, and then obviously the MEC is available to engage offline, and we can make those arrangements after the press conference. So I'm going to take the last set of questions, starting from the lady here in front, yourself, ma'am, and the gentleman behind you. You, yes, you, with the cap. And then yourself. And then I think we can close it off. Thank you.
Good. Can I go? Good morning.
does.
Good morning, MEC and your team. My name is Sisanda Mbolekwa from the Sunday Times newspaper. There's been a glaring concern across Gauteng provincial departments where we see a pattern of accounting officers and accounting officials who oversee maladministration and financial mismanagement being reshuffled across departments instead of decisive action being taken against them. But I think you've addressed consequence management, so I'm covered by my SABC colleague. Secondly, MEC, how do you plan to enforce fiscal discipline on municipalities that continue to table unfunded budgets? Thank you very much.
Good morning, MEC. Breiten here from Netwerk 24. I just have 4 quick questions, just for clarity. The previous MEC Lebogang Mahile, mentioned that there was about 4 billion rand in irregular and wasteful expenditure, and his plan was to use or digitize the department, or all departments for that matter. How are we looking on that plan, and how do you plan on really sort of capacitating government to in that fight? Then MEC, out of 10, what's the current state of finances across the provincial government in your assessment? And then as the previous MECs, I don't want to single out anyone, but have they failed at their job? And are you the man to fix that? And then you mentioned something very, I don't want to say worrisome, but you mentioned that 60%, which is about 99 billion rand, is being spent on salaries in the provincial government. Is there any cost-cutting measures that you are planning, considering this fiscal environment that you are operating in, which is severely constrained? And then MEC, considering what you said today, should we be worried that the department is on the brink of bankruptcy? Or the provincial government, sorry, not the department, the provincial government for that matter. Is there enough money to fund all of these plans that you have? A state bank, a pharmaceutical company, those are capital intensive investments, MEC. Do you have enough money to really let those plans be funded? Thank you.
Good morning, MSc and the management of the province. I am Tutu Zinkosi, representing Section 27 and the Budget Justice Coalition. So I have 3 quick questions. The first one is regarding the 9.5 billion rands in accruals. What I want to know is how much of that comes from the departments of education and healthcare, and if there are any plans to deal with that, and also if there are any other contingent liabilities to those 2 departments. I'm thinking specifically with regards to medical legal claims. And the second question is, there was a mention of a plan to employ artisans across the province. My question is, how much is budgeted for that, and how many people do you envisage it will cover? And the last question is with regards to the plan, so I call the plan by National Treasury to withhold some of the equitable share money. If that happens, in the case that it happens, what's the plan from Provincial Treasury? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. MEC, this is Sean Manala from from Community Radio. Mr. MEC, you stated about restructuring the current Amapanyaza, and of which you misinterpret the fact that crime isn't the only service. The service delivery that the people of Gauteng need. You point upon 8.1 million unemployment rate in South Africa, of which in GP is 40 plus, is 40 point, and of which I remember MEC back then there was the program called Green Army, and of which this program it was for cleaning and greening, and of which it was a effective program whereby in the communities there was no illegal dumpings and there was no ravishes lying within the communities, and the communities were on a healthy state of community. But now can the provincial government dismantle that same program, that effective program, and now the illegal dumpings are back again, terrorizing the community. Is the Gauteng province happy that the communities experience illness and sicknesses due to illegal dumpings, and of which you are saying tjhelete ke ya batho, but again previous week the same Green Army people, they were crying that they were not being paid their salaries from 2024 November. What is the provincial government doing about that? Hence you are saying tjhelete ke ya batho. Is it tjhelete ke ya batho ka molomo, or is it tjhelete ke ya batho ka di action now? Again, the uncompleted buildings and hostels, I'm happy that you are next to it, that it continuously terrorizing the communities. I thank you.
Right. Good morning, everyone there. My name is Nikele. I'm from Ekoli Jozi News. As the head honcho of the finance department, what needs to be done to grow finances of Gauteng and Gauteng municipalities? That's question one. Question two, you painted a picture that Gauteng finances are not in order. And I just want to find out from you, is there money in the Gauteng government? Enough money? Right. And then question three, if you can elaborate on the hospital billing. You spoke something like you're going to introspect the hospital billing. Just elaborate on that. And lastly, without fear or favor, I just want to hear from you, what's the government's department when it comes to the burning issue and the hot potato issue of saying undocumented foreign national must be dispatched? Thank you.
Finance Minister saying that the city should scrap the wage deal with SAMU. What is your take on that? Thank you.
No, thank you very much for the questions. I think the first one was a comment which we would duly note in terms of accountability and consequence management at both a political and administrative positioning. In terms of the enforcement of the fiscal discipline on unfunded budgets is, firstly, let's appreciate, it would be Mohale and Midval municipalities for having fiscal health, if I can put it at that. Because in as much as we paint a picture of reality, we must also acknowledge those who do good amongst us. We had in our address also stated in terms of what we have done. The minute we went into office, we were given a report on the assessment of finances and took a deliberate and direct decision in terms of financial assessments with the regulation 138 and 140 of the legislation to compel these municipalities to make monthly reportings to ourselves and the monitoring thereof. It's yet part of a process of intervention. So we can't get into an intervention process of 139 and all those other ones while we have not gone through the baby steps of what it takes to intervene, what in areas that we would have identified as problematic for us. And you would note the minute you find such areas, like the areas that we have mentioned, such as Mfuleni, it equates to both the financial performances but also the non-financial performances, wherein there's a lack of revenue, lack of collection, and that is directly equated to waste not being collected, sewage spilling, and that not being maintained, where there is no water. You know, there are large sections of Everton till today still don't have electricity as a result, and as a knock-on effect on the budget management and accounting thereof. So we have taken that decision, and we know that it will be met with a lot of resistance at times, because you can't dissolve the political engagement of it. But from where we are standing, when you are dealing with finances, you deal, unless you are dealing with addressing social matters, which are political in nature and human form, but there's little political differences in us ensuring that there should be water supply, there should be electrification, there should be all sorts of services given to our people. So we deal with the finances and the financial management thereof here as a department. And there we are, that thing of politics we put aside, and the political relations we put aside. That's why we're able to do those interventions, even though we know that there could be some level of political ramification that can manifest itself. And how you get to see it, just yesterday you saw them, they were doing a media briefing. Probably they received our letter of assessment already. So these are just some of the interventions. Digitization of the supply chain process and so forth, it is there, inclusive of the process of purchase orders, which are now migrated into systems. And that is one in the main to eliminate as well the cultural norm of having to receive purchase orders at a later stage after a good or a service has been rendered, because that's irregular. So there is an automation of that process that we have undertaken, and we also do monitoring, and I think the HOD will also dwell much into it as well in terms of the auditing aspect of it. There are those who are resistant to that change, and they still do the manual aspect of it, which we have identified, and the two departments particularly who are a catalyst. I think it's sports, arts and recreation and environment, if I'm not mistaken, who in the main still want to do the manual acquisition of work, but it is, we have migrated to an automized system, as well as even our payments as well, in terms of the logging in into the systems and the tracking thereof, and ultimately the payment of it. In terms of the state of the finances of the province, we need much more than what we have. That's the reality. The reality is that our growth and the budget growth of the province, when I looked at the quantification thereof, I think it was standing at 1.9% from the previous year with the new financial year. That's below even CPI. That's below even the inflation. So you get to understand that from where we are from last year to where we are now, the growth has been so limited that it doesn't even speak to the inflation. It means that whatever money that we would have said we've got lesser buying power than we did last year. Although the budget has grown, but the buying power is much more less. And with the introduction of what we're experiencing in the Middle East, which is not something that we would have budgeted for in the previous year, and the knock-on effect, it tells you that service providers will be limited as well as our own functioning as the province, which is going to place much more heavier strain on the budget that is appropriated. So the beauty of a provincial government is that it's appropriated, meaning that which we speak about now are funds that we already have into our books. It's a matter of expenditure now, but it's also an engagement of the collection from our own revenue, but also the submission of plans to national government that should speak of the appropriation of the next financial year. And I say this, are we able to do our commitments based on this new financial year? Yes, because we have budgeted and the money is there. Can it be increased? We are hoping so. That's why we go around looking for money from everywhere. I mean, it goes without a shadow of a doubt that we are in need of infrastructure development, particularly in health, the building of additional hospitals, the building of additional schools, the building of early childhood development centers to be run by the departments, the upgrading of our sports infrastructures, the assistance of municipality in terms of bulk infrastructure network, and just water, it goes in excess of 200 billion. So we do need the money. In the immediate, one can even draw to a conclusion, subject to a feasibility, that we need about 35 billion for the building of at least 100 schools in the immediate, so that we alleviate the pressure that is there, currently experienced by our schooling infrastructure. So we do need. That's why we have also spoken about the participation of the private sector to come in to complement that which government is doing. Because if you look at our budget, I mean, we are told that from a guidance perspective, we should be spending on infrastructure development anything between 10 to 15%. That would be sober-minded. But if you look at the composition of our budget, we are hitting between the 7% to the 8%, nothing above that. With maintenance, it's the same. So we are underspending on operation, on maintenance of our infrastructure, as well as the development of infrastructure. And that takes down the asset value, and you get to see it with the many of the projects that take much more longer than they should in terms of completion, or some of them even starting, don't even go from the infant stages of formulation as a result of that. But that is because we've got our budget is very limited, but we've also, in terms of operations, we are serving on a very high budget. I mean, 60% of our money does go to salaries and the sustenance of administration, and even then, we still also have a very high vacancy rate. And that's how we mitigate it, because we have saved a lot in terms of the vacancy rate across all departments, where that money would have then been directed to the most immediate areas. I think our vacancy rate would be hitting about 500 million or so at a provincial-wide level. The figures systematically would have them, but we have made those savings where that money has been directed towards service delivery orientation. We're not at a level of bankruptcy, no, we're not. That's why when we said in the previous year we couldn't appropriate the necessary revenue, particularly from municipalities that owe us in the tune of 2.5 billion, sitting at 2.5 billion with the financial year at 1.3 billion or so. When we could not cover up those shortfalls, we're able to go into our own coffers, into our own reserves, and plow in the money, so that there is no effect in terms of the carrying out of the budget for this financial year. That just means that we'll have to really go down as Treasury and look at other revenues and other sources of revenue to ensure that in the next financial year, not only do we build on the reserves, but we also increase in terms of our own contribution from a revenue perspective to increase the budget for the next year. So the program or the project on public-private partnership, as well as the models around build, operate and transfer, should not just be limited to infrastructure development such as offices. It should be expanded to other avenues, such as hospitals, such as clinics, 24-hour clinics, such as schools as well. And you can even go to an extent of including, by the way, scholar transport and infrastructure network of transport, such as roads and so forth, because that's how the modality of even eToll was. It was as well on those bases. So we can extend build, operate and transfer in PPP towards the social service orientated programs of the state, because in the immediate we don't have the money for infrastructure development of those aspects, and when we do, we underfund them, which takes much more longer, and the integrity of those infrastructures by the time we are completed, they have aged and so forth, which is a problem that we are seized with. The municipalities at times, in terms of categorization, are dealt with separate, differently. Metros, in most cases, are handled by national government, and then we get to interact in the mainly with locals and districts. That's why when we referred to Section 138 and 140, it would have been a limited confrontation without a lack of a better word, with these municipalities, because would have loved to have an engagement, by the way, with the city of Tshwane on the same basis that we would have had with Mrafong and the city of Ekurhuleni and the city of Johannesburg. But some of those matters get to be handled at a national level. That's why the National Treasury or the national government would have released that letter. But we do play, obviously, that role of coordination, of seamless interaction that must be exercised by ourselves. And can we do better? Definitely we can do better as a department, and that's what we all collectively expressed, that there should be greater interventions, there should be a more hands-on approach, and we have identified, even with the reports that we get given by municipalities, the integrity of those at times gets to be questionable on the basis that we genuinely feel that they would have not given us the necessary informations for us to make a determination in terms of assistance in spaces where we genuinely feel that we should be assisting more. And we have raised these concerns and raised them equally with the municipalities as well. We have addressed the issue of the AG's report, in that if you look at for the past 5 years or so, I'm sure Auditor General at this point already has a template of responding, because it's generic for the past years. It's the same thing. Unalo change from one department to the other, from one municipality to the other, but it's consistently the same. You have not addressed our issues, you have not built internal control systems, you have not, they remain consistently the same in terms of the Auditor General's opinion on the findings and the recommendations. And we have identified that, and that's why we have said that there must actually, in our last meeting that we had, we even said that we want a resolution tracker on the Auditor General's recommendations, specifically to departments and specifically to municipalities, so that once we engage a department, we are able to ask you, the AG said 1, 2, and 3. Did you address 1, 2, and 3, and how did you address them? And those processes are in place, and you'll get to see it even now as we have closed off the year. We are submitting that process is now going to be undertaken at that level, including municipalities, because municipalities as well, end of the financial year now, they are submitting in the next 3 to 4 months from June and so forth. The expectation is that there are submissions of the unaudited financial statements. We are also going to take out from that and say, this is what was said last year, how have you corrected, so that we are also able to preempt, even prior to the AG giving a report, we would have known what the shortfalls and the shortcomings are, and how then do we best intervene in terms of ensuring that that does not happen again. I think we would have also covered the question on the funding of these institutions through PPP and BOPs. Outside of that is the so the one, there's a legislation or an act that we would want to pass through in relation to the gambling, because we're always charging all these betting companies on the basis that they are currently, that's what's happening, on the basis that they are registered, or they've registered their entities to Gauteng, and therefore they should be compelled to pay a portion based on the fee on those bases. But they've migrated to cell phones and apps now, and equally as well, they are even moving from Gauteng and they are going elsewhere. So we want to obviously bring the act so that it speaks to the fact that we are still able to hold them liable in terms of a payment of a gambling license, on the basis that the activity of gambling is happening in Gauteng, whether it's happening on your phone or you the individual and so forth, but it's happening here in Gauteng, and therefore you should be contributing here Because what's happening is that the money of Gauteng, on the basis that it's on your phone, gets to be given to another province, and then there's an increase of revenue in that particular province, and they are able to effectively deal with infrastructure development on those lines. And that's how capital gets to be structured. They're able to move an asset moving from one area to another based on, at times based on feelings. If they feel that they are not being addressed here, they just pick up their bags, they go and establish a head office elsewhere, where they feel maybe they will be more listened to and they become more influential. And we need to avoid that at all costs. The accruals on health, the HOD will give us the numbers. We have done the numbers including the age analysis as well, in terms of the non-payment of invoices that are attributed towards the Department of Health. They've been trying, at least for the past couple of months, to really take down the accruals, which were standing very high. So we will respond to the minister's letter in terms of the intention, and we have received it in good spirit, because we are not supposed to be owing local municipalities. We are supposed to be within the time frame of nothing more than 30 days in terms of what we owe municipalities, regardless of how much they owe us. But we'll be able to explain and formulate a payment plan, which we have already started engaging on in terms of how we are going to close that gap. But part of the explanations would be that there are genuine disputes in terms of the billing system and the integrity of municipalities and how they are billing the province. And it is a subject of a dispute. So in the that dispute phase was obviously saying that fix your billing system, and then once you've fixed it, we agree that this is correct, we'll then pay you, you know. So these are some of the problems, but the other problems was the zoning of schools. Many of our schooling infrastructure is still zoned as business zones, which is much more higher than being billed as an NPO, because that's what a school is. It's not there to generate an income, but to render an educational service to our people. And it's that rezoning which has increased. So those are some of the matters in terms of dispute. But we have also said that in as much as the rest of society is still compelled to make payments, whether there is a dispute or not, because dispute mechanism manifests itself as a process between yourselves and a municipality, we should be subjected to the same. So we should be servicing that debt while it's still under review or being disputed, because the people of Dube are subjected to that by municipalities, and we should be no different as well. So there is that understanding and that process, and that's what we'll explain. We'll also explain that in as much as we owe them 2.5, they owe us 2.5 billion, which is under motor vehicle licensing fees in the main, as a debt that municipalities owe us, because every time you pay for a renewal of a license disc or a license and so forth, for license discs specifically, that money comes to us, and then we give municipalities a portion. I think it's standing at 20%. We give municipalities 20% for assisting us in the collection of motor vehicle licensing. And so you go and pay there, then they don't want to give us our money. So it's sitting with them there, which is what is problematic for us at this point. we do agree that crime is not the only service that is needed. That's why there was an elevation of particularly environment at a provincial level, and the coordination thereof. There has been a higher rise of illegal dumping areas, and that is what is receiving the utmost attention from a provincial government perspective. But there's a grey line between what is a mandate of the province and local government that we are just trying to synergize, because as leaders of society we cannot stand here and say to you that no, the collection of waste is not our problem. It belongs to Pick It Up, or it belongs to the city of Johannesburg when we are here. It also becomes our responsibility to ensure that service is rendered to you. So as we are coming here, we see that there is a lot of waste. We've already informed the department that we came to Dube Hostel and it was extremely filthy there. You must take a deliberate program of action to ensure that there is cleaning that is done. And we are expecting that it then kicks off, and then there is that work that is being done. I say this to you because there are intergovernmental relations that need to manifest themselves when we run government, because we are not running in isolation. Although some mandates are for province and some for national and some for local, there is an element of responsibility that lies within the province to ensure that there is a coordination thereof. What needs to be done in terms of growing of the finances? Very simple. We must engage in a revenue enhancement exercise across all board. There are revenue leakages, as we said. The amendments of the Gambling Act is one such. The lesser spending, the state, we spend in terms of medical supplies, it's sitting at about almost 5 billion. Once we have a state pharmaceutical company, without a shadow of a doubt, there will be decreasing figures, because our feasibility study speaks to that. And once there is a decrease in terms of that expenditure, we're able to redirect those finances elsewhere. So what we save is also a revenue enhancement exercise, because we would have spent lesser on a good that we were expected to spend much more higher on, and we are therefore able to redirect these finances. So before we can even deal on the increase of the budget, we must speak of how we effectively deal with the 180 billion. How do we maximize the current budget that we have? And then we look at other avenue streams. So there are a lot of illegal billboards on provincial roads. And all of those billboards are paying someone. And they are paying entities that are functioning who are not giving the state any monies back. So we are coming for them for those billboards. And that's a serious revenue stream. I mean, you look at when you go from here to the airport, most of the billboards around the airport, by the way, are illegal. Most of them. And that's a high traffic area that could generate in the millions of monies. And it's not the companies who are advertising that have put up the billboard there. There's someone who put up a billboard there, and those companies and marketing companies are paying that particular company who's not paying us anything. So we start there. But there are many other spaces as well that we can go into. We do have infrastructure, by the way, that if we agree and then we build proper, nice, refurbished infrastructure, such as our buildings. We've got a lot of buildings as the state that they just require to be refurbished, repurposed. That can generate an income for us. The takeover of even our own hijacked buildings and the conversions thereof for other amenities. We should be sitting now with a state-owned building that that you can use for conferencing purposes, instead of us going to all these hotels and so forth. And equally as well, everyone else should be leasing those areas from us. So there are avenues of us being able to generate an income in the main, outside of what we had already repetitively spoken about in terms of the models behind PPP and BOTs. And those are the areas that we are looking at in ensuring that we build enough financing for us to be able to deal with the many issues. The hospital billing, yes. So there are many provincial governments who owe our government on hospital billings, because maybe they don't have the necessary expertise to render certain services. For example, in the Northwest, there are certain services that would have, they would transfer some of their patients to Gauteng, because we've got the proper and necessary facilities to deal with specific medical conditions. And because of that, we then bill that particular province. And the expectation is that that province must pay us for having rendered a service for their for their citizens, and for, I mean, not necessarily for their citizens, but for their residents, rather, you know, and that goes to even countries as well. Do the same, you know. So, what's our position in terms of documentation? Everyone must be documented. That goes without saying. Everyone must be accounted for. Everyone. We must know who you are, where you stay. A responsible government would know that. Because if you're looking at billing, we ought to know who we are billing. When there are matters of crime and you do fingerprinting and so forth, we should be able to locate you. So that goes without saying. And I say this even wearing a red overall, that everyone must be documented. Not only for the state to be able to function, but also as well for the social aspect of it, and the interaction of society. We're yet to get a comprehensive report in terms of the financial standing in the city of Johannesburg and the knock-on effect that the increment would have had. But we are confident in that the decision would have been taken having looked at the financial analysis and standing of the municipality. I mean, the same increment was also done in the city of Tshwane as well. So if there's an overdue increase that is entitled to workers, we must do everything and anything in our power to ensure that that is done. But that is done effectively, that is done in a way that it doesn't compromise the fiscus, that is done in such a way that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we are overspending or over-capitalizing on human resources, but not on the infrastructure developmental aspect of it. So once we get that, we'll be able to from even our end to give thorough guidance. But we are happy that national government has taken a keen interest and really just gone down to deal with specifics of the city of Johannesburg finances. Because more often than not, and we'll realize it as we end of the year now, is that many of the municipalities would have underperformed financially as they close off the year as compared to what was initially an adopted budget. But when they start the new financial year, they don't start it from how they ended it. They start the new financial year in an increment of how they started it the previous year. And those are some of the problematic areas that we really just need to go into and give guidance to as we continue with the process of oversight on municipalities as well. HOD?
Thank you very much, MEC. I'll just touch on the question of your accruals. So as MEC indicated, 9.4 billion is the total accruals for the province. And the question was specific on health and education. So health is sitting at 4.8 billion and education is at 1.9 billion. Thank you.
No, thank you. So that's the state of the accruals on these two departments, and I think every other point has been covered. No? Oh, the willingness is there. That's why we're here. And that's why we mentioned, you know, and that's why we're honest about it. To say, and in that, I think in infrastructure, you know, it gets to be so bad when you look at it and then you go down and you look at that 77% of what would have been directed as infrastructure for health has already been committed based on accruals. So by us identifying the problem, it tells you that there is a political willingness to do the correction, because we don't just speak for the sake of speaking or asking for a platform. We are raising these so that they are documented even from a public perspective, and you'll be able to hold us to account here in the next 3 to 4 months and say, but you said this in the beginning. Why 3 months later there has been no change? So the political will to advance some of these discourses is 100% there, and I know even from an administrative perspective, the team that I'm sitting with here are hard at work in addressing some of the, and if not all of the matters that we have raised and that they too have identified. I mean, you know, section 138 and 140. So we can't be asked about if there is a political will to assess and to identify and to do the corrective measures. So it's 100% there, and let it manifest itself in the next coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MEC. As you have noticed, our MEC is very thorough when he responds to questions. So with that being said, colleagues, we are going to adjourn the media briefing. But before that, with your permission, MEC, there's been a request from the floor that the executive management officials introduce themselves, and because they want to put the the names to the faces.
You can start.
Thank you so much. My name is Tomisani Tsebekulu. I am the Deputy Director General responsible for financial governance. Thank you so much.
Good morning once more. I'm Numisa Nyani, the Head of Department for the Gauteng Provincial Treasury.
Should I also introduce myself? Greetings, my name is Nkululeko Dunga. I am the MEC of Finance in Gauteng. were given extended responsibility of being in charge of triple Ps and business and crime prevention by the EXCO yesterday. Thank you.
Yeah, MEC is standing, so I'm also standing now. My name is Mnetisi Vilagazi. I'm the leader responsible for sustainable fiscal resource management in the province. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeanette Tovejani. I'm the Chief Director responsible for compliance, governance, monitoring, and evaluation in the province. Ngibuya lana eDlamini. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you, colleagues. So we have come to the end of the media briefing, and we understand there's an appetite to engage with the MEC more. He is open to one-on-one interviews, but let's engage offline after the presser is done. Thank you very much. Thank you, MEC. Thank you to our executive management officials. They are heading straight to the executive management meeting right now. It's starting now at 1, so we have to release them. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, everyone. We are done. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.